shortly. He's in another event and he'll be running up sooner, so he'll be joining us shortly. So I want to thank everyone for taking the time out this evening to join in this event. I know it's a pre-event leading up to our reunion coming up next weekend. So thank you all. And we'll just give him a couple of minutes for him to join us, and then we'll take it from there. So for the meanwhile, we could just free flow and catch up, and that should be it.
Yeah, Augusta, thanks for the introduction, and I think this might be a good time to maybe just kind of give everyone a summary of the plans for next weekend. As we all know, I see some of us from the GTA and from Canada and Ontario on the call already, and just to kind of give a summary of where we're at, and I see Oga Ejike is on the call too, and that's the chairman of the planning committee. So I think that for the most part, like, the weekend is all hands on deck. Looking forward to a time where we can spend the weekend together, celebrate one another. All plans are in place for the weekend. And I'll also give Oga Beam, I see our president has joined the call, Oga Beam and Oga Ejike, maybe a moment to also just kind of brief the house. Just while we wait for the speaker to join the call, just to kind of give an update to the reunion. Oga Ejike, if you don't mind me calling you up, sir, if you can just share, your maybe like in 1 or 2 minutes, just where we're at with preparations for the reunion, sir.
Okay, AY, thank you very much. Slight correction there. I'm a member of the local organizing committee. Everybody in that committee will then be chairman. So we all have different responsibilities, and everyone has been meeting up to their own responsibilities in planning for this reunion. So we hope for us to gather for 2 days. We know that wherever you are located in Canada, in the US, you've eaten all sorts of menus. So we're not going to say we want to impress you with food. We don't want to impress you with the city. The unique thing is just our coming together. And that is what we've tried to make very key, coming together, putting names to faces. And there's just something about being together with people from the same humble beginnings, or people with the same backgrounds. So we're really expecting you guys. We're still preparing, because every day we get to hear something that we would like to meet up with. So for instance, all those who are coming with kids below 10 years old, please let us know. Let the kids not just feel like mommy and daddy took us somewhere and they were not carried along. So please let us know if you are coming with kids below 10 years of age, and let's prepare to meet them. It's just going to be the regular reunion, but Canada, you get us one. The rest of it is one keep and secret. Let me take the opportunity to introduce Joyce Abiodun. I hope I don't mess up your name. She's an ex-JAW who just came into Canada, but she's been very, very determined at mingling with ExJAM. So she's gone out of her way, met with Chris, I've spoken with her over the phone. She's promised to attend, and she's even on this call. So we're hoping to make it a very interesting reunion. And let me give the president time to talk. AY, are you there?
I'm here, sir. Okay, thanks for the introduction. And I see that we were just catching up with Joyce before you joined.
Oh,
if, yeah. No, I mean, it's it would be nice to, put the face to the name by next weekend. But I think if you don't mind, just kind of giving us like a summary of the planned events for the Friday and the Saturday for the most part, and some of the other things that we've seen in the flyers, the Niagara Falls, etc. Just for the purposes, for the benefits of those that are joining the call, just something to look forward to. If you don't mind, just a quick recap of that before I follow that in.
Okay, so most of you will start arriving from the 14th. We're not very sure about what your itineraries are all about, but hopefully by evening, we expect that most people should be in town. And that evening, we're going to have a barbecue in ExJAM Chris or DJ's residence. Barbecue, play around, or whatnot. But when we're done with that, for the younger fellows, and some of us will try to do bobo for that day, we'll have the opportunity of going to some Nigerian, I don't want to call it club before one person go vex with me. But anyway, there are some Nigerians who have very good outfits. Something like Festac Lounge is owned by Nigerians. There's also another lounge in Mississauga. So depending on how we finish up from the barbecue, some of us might decide to go down there and just hang around for the night. And then the next day we're having route march, which is on the 15th. In the morning, we're having a route march around where most of us will be camping, which is Sandman Hotel. We'll have a brief route march just to rekindle that lifestyle we all had in AFMS, and for the extras, the same thing. So just to rekindle that, but nothing to strain us, just have a quick route march, come back, and then those who are lodged in will go in for their breakfast. After that, we'll have a small seminar where we'll have a speaker who's just going to talk to us on connecting the community of excellence. And after that, people will retire again. For those who have hired cars or anything, you are free to go into town, look around Ontario. If you need our assistance, we'll have a couple of places you could go to. The CN Towers, if you still have the time, before the gala night, which is going to be Saturday night. For the gala night, again, it's just mingling and meeting ourselves. We've prepped for good food, good drinks, and or whatnot. Come there, tell us your AFMS stories. We'll share our experiences and connect on a larger front. However, on Sunday, people should be departing back to their base, but some people might have late flights. If you're departing in the evening, we, the host, don't intend for you to be bored. So if people are able, we'll drive them down to the Niagara Falls, hang out there for a couple of hours, take pictures and all whatnot. But for anybody who wants to do anything like the zip line, the boat cruise and all that, please book ahead, because on Sunday it might be very difficult for you to queue, get on those activities and then head back to the airport. But if you have a late flight, we're not going to leave you bored hanging around in the GTA. We'll try to engage you, show you a couple of places of interest, and then wish all of you a safe flight back. But the long and short of it, let's all just gather. So I think that is it until, if there are any questions, I will try and answer.
Thank you so much for that summary. Just before other questions, I just will probably add that those that are driving from the U.S. Through the Buffalo border, I think that the Niagara Falls trip will also be just a stone throw away. So, they can take advantage of the plans for Sunday, drive through Niagara, and then just hit the border and cross to the US. But yeah, it sounds really exciting. I think the only other question I will ask is the CSR part of donations or community service. If you don't mind just touching on that very briefly.
Oh yeah, so we're doing some donations to the Sick Kid Hospital, which will come up on Tuesday. We've been able to get them a few of the things on their list: coloring books, paintings, things for kids to play with when they have the time. So we'll be able to purchase a few of that, and we're going to make that donation on Tuesday, 11th of July. So we're still expecting, for now, there are about 3 of us who have indicated availability to join in the train, but we're still open for more people to join us.
Thank you very much, sir. I think with that we can open up for questions. If you have any clarifications, those that are embarking upon a trip, if you want to clarify how to get to the hotel, or we'll just kind of open up for general questions, and then Oga Beam can chime in, and then we can transition to the seminar itself.
Yeah, so we believe that we're all in North America. We all know how to move around here, come and pick a cab or rent a vehicle or anything. But if there's anyone who thinks is going to have any challenge with that, please let us know on time, so that we'll make arrangements for you one way or the other. If you really going to have any problems leaving the airport to the hotel, please let us know on time, and then we'll make arrangements for you. Over. Yeah, why?
Okay, no, I'll just open it up for questions from the house.
Oh, okay.
Any questions or comments as regards to the reunion?
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us this evening. Really appreciate it. Apologies, I'm actually just getting off a flight, and I'm still in immigration, so I can't have my camera on. May they not come carry me for here. But first, a quick one. I just want to say on behalf of the ExJAM, a big thank you to the planning committee, GK, IO, and the rest of the team for all the hard work that's gone into this. Really appreciative. And we're really looking forward to celebrating next weekend. So thank you for that.
Look, we lost Oga Beam.
Yeah, okay.
Well, there's a question in the chat.
What's that?
Oh, I think that's for Oga GK.
Give everyone. Are we ExJAM allowed to invite ExJAMs? Please do. It's so the ExJAM are having a reunion, but we know that our counterparts are the ExJAMs. We've had a joint reunion with them before. This just doesn't happen to be a joint reunion. However, this is one family, so we would love to see you guys, to you ladies. If you know any other ExJAM around, please invite her to come. And definitely, if we drink water remain, I go drink finish. If we not drink remain, we go drink finish. It's all one family.
And to add to that, I think that this is an opportunity for us in Canada, Ontario, to galvanize one another. Really, like there's a lot of us that are spread across Ontario that we don't even have a stock of who we have here. So this is one that we're hosting. This is one that we're bringing home. So I think it's an opportunity for us to get to know, put a face to names, and then also know where we're at, and just kind of build from there. Because we've been to Houston, we've been to Chicago, we've had multiple online meetings with our brothers and sisters in the US. But I think this is one that will create the building blocks for us to get to know one another in Canada, and have not really connected. We're hoping that we will, and we can begin to
You're breaking. Your network is bad.
Is it better? Hello?
No, I was saying your network is bad. You're breaking.
Oh, okay. My apologies. Sorry, I'm just crossing the border myself. But yeah, I was just kind of acknowledging the potentials of this reunion, especially for those of us in Ontario and Canada. So I think it promises to be one that can ultimately build a relationship amongst us. So please feel free to invite other ExJAM, ExJAW in Ontario, in the GTA, spread across Canada. If they can possibly make it, I think it will be good.
Yeah, very true. We would love to see them. It's one family. Just because we're having a reunion that isn't joint doesn't mean they are not welcome to the event.
Absolutely. I think that being is trying to reconnect. So when it comes in, we'll probably get the host again. The host will join in at 7:30, so we can start the seminar then. But I think we still have like 8 minutes for just general before we start the event proper.
Yeah,
okay.
I do have a question for Guy GK though. Guy GK, please can you share? Do you have any plans for for people to virtually join the experience of the reunion? Do you have plans to live stream the event?
Yeah, so we know that there are people who would love to come, but they can't make it either for family engagements, immigration reasons, or whatever. So we intend to stream all our events live via Zoom, and if possible, on our social media channels. So the route march hopefully should be streamed live, the seminar, and then the gala night. We intend to have all these things on Zoom for people to connect from wherever they are to us. For instance, there are going to be 2 people who will anchor the events. One person is going to be remote, one person is going to be on ground. So we actually intend to have that connection.
Yeah, thanks, Oga. Like participation. Is there anything that we have to participate in, like if for people who would be virtual?
So when you say participate, for instance, we'll have a family fitness week, which we expect people to do on their own and post pictures and videos as much as they can. But on the day of the gala night, if you're online and you want to engage with us, you speak with us, the only thing we can't do is serve you food or drinks. So if you want to engage with us, speak to us and all whatnot, or participate in any, in case we have quizzes and all whatnot. If you're online, you want to answer, you indicate there'll be somebody manning that who's going to see you and reach out to you. Aside from that, can you clarify what you mean by participate?
Thanks, Oga Klesa. Thank you. Okay.
So my grandpapa friend, na police, so always very, very careful how we answer questions. This participate, we just bring like that. Any other questions as we wait for the president? Okay, Goldman, the next question will be for you. Is there anything you want us to provide to enable that connection to be made? The virtual connection?
No, nothing like that. Everything's fine.
Oh, okay.
If you can think virtually,
So what? Your movement is not allowing us.
I'll say
We can hear you. Okay, so let me just ask, is there anything people will be looking forward to experiencing? Because there's still a lot of moving parts in the preparation. So if there's anything anyone thinks they may want to experience and share with us, we'll probably throw it into the program of events.
Hello, Oga, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I said carpool for. Can you share more on like the carpooling on Sunday for people who would be heading to Niagara Falls? So let's say you had a car rental. Is there any carpool or car sharing? To get to the fall? Any plans for carpooling?
Sorry, sir, you're on mute. If you're speaking, we can't hear you, Sir JK.
Yes. Oh, thanks. So on that, I said we still don't have the numbers of those who may not be having early flights on Sunday. So we don't want to start making any arrangements and people are leaving first in the morning on Sunday and then we're left hanging. So it's all going to be a function of the activities starting from arrival to Saturday, and then as we mingle, we get to understand what people want to do, and then we'll make further arrangements. There are a couple of us who are available and mobile, or who can make one or two cars available. So we need to know what people really want to do before we make any concrete arrangement. But it is there. If there are people who are not leaving immediately, we don't want them to be bored because they would have checked out of the hotel. So we'll go do something else before your flight. But we need to know. We don't know anybody's itinerary yet. Is that?
What do we need to know?
So they were asking how they are going to carpool for Sunday if there are people going to Niagara and all whatnot. And I said, we don't know what the itineraries are. We don't know who is leaving first in the morning. We don't know who is leaving last thing. So from Friday, as people come in, Friday, Saturday, we'll get to know that. And then we can make arrangements on how to carpool. But without having this information, we can't for sure say this is how we intend to carpool.
Because when I heard you say we need to know, you scared me now.
Yeah, we need to know when they come in. If everybody's leaving first thing on Sunday morning, then there it goes. We wish everybody a safe flight back. But if the good number of people.
Presido, good evening, sir.
He's going through immigration, so he can't talk now. He's going through immigration. Yeah.
He just joined. He just joined back.
I actually should not be on I'm still actually through immigration, but I have like 30 seconds. So apologies for this. I just landed, but I do want to introduce Abi before I may have to jump off again. So again, thank you to everybody for taking the time to show up. It's always great having these conversations, and it's a pleasure to have Abi on.
Thanks, Vim.
One of the smartest people I know. He's a serial entrepreneur, both in the US and Nigeria. People talk about hedge funds, private equity. He's been there and done it all. I think the opportunity to share his experience and journey would benefit everybody. To get insights on things from how do you start, where do you start, access to funding. He's been on both sides, both in terms of raising funds and also investing. So I think he's an excellent speaker to have, and we're especially thankful because, like I said, the hope was that we'll do a full seminar at a later date, but this was a last-minute replacement with less than 24 hours, actually maybe more like 15 hours notice. So we're really, really grateful to have him here. So please join me in welcoming him. Abi, thanks for taking the time, and we look forward to hearing your story. So if you could maybe just give us an introduction about yourself and tell us a bit about your journey, your ventures. We'll then open it up to questions. This is meant to be informal and interactive. Cyril and Ayo would be the moderators. And yes, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. I know you're having to go through immigration and all, so I understand where you're going to. Sorry, but welcome back. So very nice to meet you all. Bill said it all. He called me and said if I could share some of my experiences, some of my backgrounds, and without hesitation, I felt this is something I would love to do. I'm actually at an event at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And the reason why I mentioned that is it's really impressive that we were able to have an event here, but it's a function of, Africans in the diaspora pulling resources together. This is a building that I think Obama launched, right? So coming in, people were like, what are you guys doing here? No one expected us to be here. And that's what message I want to get across to you all. In as much as we're all trying to do our individual things, I think if we're able to pull resources together, we can all definitely achieve a lot more than what we can all do as individuals, and that's what I'll say. So my background is I went to King's College. It's the King's College reunion we're having here in North America. I did engineering in OAU. Then I started doing startups straight out of college. It was pretty unusual. When I look back now, I'm like, how did my parents agree to this? Which is pretty crazy. But it opened doors for me. It gave me access to Silicon Valley in the US, Wharton Business School. I don't think if I hadn't done the entrepreneurial things, I wouldn't have gotten in, that's for sure. But that's always left me a need or desire to do much more, beyond my sole comfort or the comfort of my immediate family. I've always wanted to make an impact, given everything I've done, right from, Wharton, my interest and experience in venture capital is about building businesses. So I've done startups, I've done venture capital. I worked on both sides, but the prevailing theme has been around how can you make a difference? How can you make an impact? The one time I detoured, and I think this might be useful to many of you on this call who are considering, what next? Do I start as an investor? Do I go start my own thing? Do I acquire a business? I tried acquiring a business in the US, and that's one area that a lot of people don't talk about. It has the lowest risk of all the entrepreneurial options because you're acquiring a business that is already existing. You can use leverage. I think and someone with experience with the SBA was meant to speak to you all. So that's something that is unique in America. So that could be something that folks, I know you're probably in your late 40s, early 50s, might be looking at, looking for a low risk thing to do. When I tried doing this, it was many years ago. I was much younger, and it wasn't compelling for me at the time because I felt it was not enough of an impact. The kind of companies you could buy were very simple. There was so much money chasing few deals, so you had to buy smaller and smaller companies. The bigger size companies, the bigger firms were buying them, and I just felt, I couldn't make a difference. Let's say buying an auto repair company or network cabling company in America at the time. Maybe now, maybe after all the adventure, I'm like, okay, maybe I just need a comfortable living for my family, and that's not too bad. Because when you acquire business through acquisition, I think they have like about a 90% success rate. So from a risk management standpoint, they're less risky to do. And you can use other people's money, get SBA loans and what have you. The big challenge is because it's not so risky, many people are looking at this space. So you're going to have competition with the search, finding a company to buy. So that's on the one hand. So I've done that, and I decided, look, I want to do more Africa. I want to build things. I want to do venture, start my own businesses. So I started a hospitality business, property management. We're trying to create an international African brand, similar to what Starwood Capital did with the Sheraton brand. They built that brand from scratch and took it public. So we created Amara Suites. I mean, we could have brought in a foreign brand to start this in Africa, but the market was too small. We just didn't have the money to go bring a big foreign brand. So we said, why not? We started it ourselves. So we're doing that. But of recent, I've gone back to my roots. I'm doing more on the investing side. So we're still doing the operating business on a day-to-day. So it's always good to have day-to-day cash flow. So we're still doing that, but we're also investing in early stage companies, and we're finding some success there. So back to you guys. You want to also explore by maybe your money is working for you because there are only so many hours in the day. There are only so many companies that can start at this point. So I've been at this for a while now. So, and I'm like, there's a bit of fatigue. I'm like, I only have so many more shots at this. So I'm very particular about where I put my efforts today. So I'd rather invest in young entrepreneurs, overlooked founders. This is another area where we're finding success. Africans in diaspora who don't have networks and haven't had much attention in terms of funding or network. So we're helping. We just got involved with a young firm that is doing hedge funds for retail. So we've taken a position in the management company. So I think we're finding some success there. I won't have access to this kind of folks if not that they were overlooked founders. So that's the other thing I'm doing. Letting my money work for me. So we have a fund. So the formal structure. So we have the fund and we have the operating companies. What else can I add? Okay, so maybe I can add my Africa perspective and US perspective. I came to Silicon Valley, but I went back to go start business in Africa. Why? First thing I'll say is, I don't know if you guys can hear me. I'm not rambling. But first thing I'll say is, I come from a privileged background, a middle class privileged background. Why I say that is this: I'm not rich or anything. I didn't come from wealth, but my background has allowed me to take risk. I talk about, leaving college to go start a company. You can't do that, if you're working class poor in America. Within a month of leaving school, and you don't have a job, your bills are piling up, you're out of the streets, so that's a privilege. So I felt right from college, starting was no issue in Africa. But when I tried to do the acquisition thing in the US, straight out of business school, I didn't have much of a runway. Even though I didn't have passion for it, I discovered after time, but I didn't have much of a runway in the US. So I went back to Africa and I had a runway. I had family support, I had places to stay, things to do. I didn't have to worry about a roof over my head. So we have to be cognizant of the privilege we have. So for your team, when you're looking at what do we do next, you have to also think about that. You're in America or you're in North America, you don't have that much of a runway. So maybe it's you start something on the side while you're still working, or you pull funds together and you invest with folks who can actually run with these things now. Not all of us have to go start or run a business, but we can be indirectly involved. So you also have to figure out, where do I stand on this privilege spectrum, right? Do I have a wife who can support me? Do I have resources? Because entrepreneurship is literally for the well-off, which is why you find very few minorities doing this in the West. It's more the case in Africa, but the challenge in Africa is people don't have capital. So that's another thing I'll add. You have to find a way to match capital with ideas. So if you say, okay, I'm going to leave my job in North America now, and I want to go back to Africa, you have to be very wary, right? Because you're coming with your new ideas, but if you don't have capital, you'll be laughed out of town. Most of the folks who have done well in Africa don't come from a lot of sophistication. It's either they have networks close to power, or maybe they're crude traders, but they have raw cash. So they don't welcome your bright ideas. They'll listen to you if you have some money along with those ideas. So that's something else to look out for. So I welcome questions. I don't want to, say things that are not relevant to you. Our time is short. So if people have pressing questions in their journey next, or you're looking at areas to focus on, I can hopefully help. I'm not your equity guy. I'm not going to be the guy you ask, do I invest in index funds or not? There are many people out there who can help you with that. I'm an alternative guy, venture capital, early stage investing. If you're saying my portfolio, maybe I need to put 5 to 10% in alternatives, I recommend that. The challenge us minorities have is we don't have access to the good deal. We're just not in those conversations. But if you look at a lot of the folks who are the family offices, many of them invest in alternatives. They either invest in real estate, or they're doing treasury bills, but they also are big investors in venture capital and private equity. So unfortunately, our folks are not aware of it, or just don't have access. So that's where I can come in. So that's it.
Oh, thank you so much, Abi. I think that first of all, I want to appreciate taking up the call to take this seminar very last minute. We appreciate your the commitment to sharing your experience and your journey with the group. So we really thank you for that. And also just kind of walking us through what you do and the opportunities that exist. We think that during the course of this conversation or this discussion, we can ask questions and gain some insight as to what steps we can take in general. So I will open up to the house for questions, but I also just want to kind of kick things off with some questions into some of the points that you've raised. So I think that one of the things for us, migrating from Nigeria to North America, that's Canada and the US, we find that most of us have like we're different phases, in this journey. Some of us are just relocating. Some of us have been here for some time. and some of us are, been here for a longer time. But to start off, I would want to inquire from you what your thoughts are about people just making that step, the Japa syndrome, as they say, people just making that step, embarking on a journey with their families, men or women, leaving their careers and relocating to, the US and Canada. From the standpoint of investing or entrepreneurship, or just kind of kicking things off from where they left off in Nigeria, what would your recommendations or your thoughts be for someone that is either just taking that step or is about to take that step?
I'll say, one of the first things is, you got to get the basics right. And for us immigrants, the first thing is you got to get official residency, right? So, if you're on H1, you need to get a green card. If you have a Western passport already, maybe green card is fine. If you have an African passport, you have to turn that green card to a Western passport. Why I mention that is the race has started, and with us from Africa, we started the race behind. The guys you're competing with at the entrepreneurship change the world level are not worried about their travel options. You have to be able to travel the world, to compete. You have to be able to move around. You can't be worrying about your immigration status. That's the first thing. That's why I see a lot of Indians stuck in H1B. They can't even leave their employer, right? The person who can't leave his employer can even start talking about, I have some startup somewhere. You don't have that luxury, right? So you have to first try and even out the playing field, right? So we're behind in so many ways. So we have the immigration issue. So when you now level that up with your residency, you now have the access to capital issue. Your North American kid is growing up and, is growing up in a country club. So you are still dealing with immigration issues. He's already told his Uncle Bob, I have this brilliant idea. Uncle Bob says, here's 200,000, go test out the idea, right? So he has access to capital. He doesn't have to worry about his immigration status. So you need to fix that. The other thing is you need to start saving, no matter how little, so you have some options, because that savings gives you runway. It's the difference between I can afford to take 6 months off to try out this idea or this business, right? If you don't have that, then you just can't compete again. Back to that. And back to what I said originally, it's a privilege, right? It's a privilege. I was able to start saying I'm going back to Africa, do Africa, when I had an international passport. I had a US passport, right? Prior to that, I had to take, whatever job options, even though a job I liked in tech and what have you, but I didn't have the luxury of saying, okay, I'm going to give it up. Even business school, I applied to business school. The timing was great, but I had my green card by the time I went to business school. So timing was important, but you have to prioritize. You have to put, you can't put the cart before the horse. A few people have tried it, like that hedge fund guy I told you getting involved in. He just got his green card, and this is someone who worked in Goldman. He went to Wharton with all the background. But even that immigration thing, there were times when he had to go to Canada to go and regularize his passport, and they nearly detained him. He delayed his start in jobs. So those things, no matter how smart and no matter how top tier your job is, if you haven't got that fixed, it's a big hassle. So when you talk about folks just starting out, I think that has to be their first priority. Folks. And I'm glad you mentioned that folks are at different points in their journey, right? The guy who already has his green card or his US passport or UK passport or Canadian passport, kids are already finished high school or even finished college. He's looking at different things, right? He's now looking at, so where do I put some of his money to work where I can get a higher multiple? Do I go buy real estate or do I go acquire a business? So these are different stages, and I think, acquiring a business is something that is very accessible that many of us don't think about. But if you look at a lot of the folks with wealth in America, many of them are small business owners, right? So, in the press, all you see are the heroes, the Elon Musk of the world, and the Facebook guys, but that's not the success. Those guys, venture-backed startups, success rate is about 25%. If you are bootstrapped, the success rate is about 10%. The success rate is about 10%. So you have to look at where you are as an immigrant. Can you afford to take that 10% risk? Or do I go and do the one that has 90% success rate, which is the acquiring a small old-fashioned business? For me, I had grand ambitions. I still have grand ambitions, which is what I've been doing. But it came with a lot of risk and it came with some privilege. We've made mistakes. There have been parts we've taken that didn't work out. But it was a big function of privilege. I still have the smarts to be able to think about opportunities, ideas, but you can't discount that privilege. So there's privilege and there's also luck, right? So all those things have to come together, when you look at these things. But someone who is just jackpotting is very early in the game. You have to focus on your residency. You have to focus on acquiring skills so that you're invited to the table to these deals. So it's like, let me get the best job possible. Let me work with brand names so that when I'm now looking to do my own startup, it's easy for me to raise money. I can raise money from my colleagues. I can raise money from the folks who invested in those companies. Imagine if you say, I was a former Google engineer, or I worked at, Facebook, or, I worked at Coinbase, it opens doors, and that's what the Indians did. Indians did all of a sudden start becoming CEOs in Silicon Valley. No, they came in, they were techies in Silicon Valley. They were lucky that some of the companies they worked for did IPOs. They got wealth through those IPOs. Then they started seeding their own startups and making sure that Indians were the CEOs of those startups. They now have success. So now it's all of a sudden people are used to seeing Indians as CEOs of startups or CEOs of companies in America. So you have to have some success. You have to have some ownership, And unfortunately, the way things happened with Africans, the first wave that came to North America, the prevailing thing was you could only be a professional. I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, and what have you. And risk-taking was totally discounted. But if you see true wealth, in the UK, in America, you have to have some kind of ownership. Taxes are very high. You look at the professional, half your money is going to taxes. The country is set up for business owners. You can take, depreciation, tax breaks, all sorts of things, you can do, So I think we have to be cognizant of that, and it's all about exposure. No one is saying don't come and get the job, don't come and get your papers. But, after that, then what? That can't be the end in itself. It has to be a means to an end. When you keep on thinking, the job is the end in itself, in many cases you can become a victim. It's like, oh, unemployment rate is not high. You better become the first person that gets fired. I remember when I went to business school, a lot of people were getting fired, but I knew that when I was in Silicon Valley, that wasn't the end in itself. I was like, I'm on this path. So you always have to be ahead of the curve. That's the way I see it anyway. So I hope that helped. Some question answered.
No, absolutely, it did, and thank you for that elaborate response. I think that your response to that question also opens up for other questions. But I really appreciate your insight on that topic. But before I kind of take on to the next set of questions, I would like to just mention here that if you do have a question for the speaker, please feel free to unmute yourself and air your question, or you could put it on the chat box, the chat section. And I can just read it out for the speaker to respond to the questions. I have a question already from the chat, but before I go into that, I just would want to pick up from where you left off. So you talked about how the Indians they've been able to galvanize themselves and collaborate and ultimately build a niche for themselves. I think that their opportunities exist everywhere. But from your standpoint, like, what could a body of Nigerians or immigrants from Africa, how can we consolidate our efforts towards, maybe early startups or, getting into the entrepreneurial space?
Sorry, I was on mute. So a big thing we're missing in the and I think we have just like 50 more minutes. A big thing we're missing in the Nigerian diaspora is, and it extends from, Africa, low levels of trust. So we tend not to come together or share opportunities, or more importantly, just come together and invest together. So we can do remittances and all that, we can share tips on education, but when it comes to where the real power is, we don't come together. So I'll give you an example. So I'm at this gala now, right? But my classmates and I will never pool resources to say, let's go invest together or do something like that together. So there's a lot of social, but we don't have that. And I recently met this Haitian American senior executive, and he said, 30 of his classmates came together and they're investing in the US stock market. When they started, folks were just putting in a few $100s a month together, and they started with about less than $10,000. Now they've put like $1.5 million together. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. That's how you have significance. Now people come and pitch them, right? That's how you have power. So it's helped each individual. Unfortunately, one of them they lost one of them lost their lives, but they were able to share proceeds for that individual and give his wife. The wife didn't even know the account existed. She was so happy. So those are the kind of things we can be doing. So even if not all of us have to work in a fund or work in Silicon Valley, but just pulling resources makes all the difference in the world. And we can now use that to leverage the expertise of certain individuals in the group. Not that everyone can evaluate startups. Someone asked me in the comment just now, how do we evaluate startups? Not all of us will have that expertise, and not all of us should, or not all of us will have the time either, right? So I think, the first things first is let's all find a way to pool resources, and that's what gives the family offices, the pension funds, the insurance funds access to all these top tier VC funds. You can't just walk in there and say, I want to invest, $5,000. They're not going to give you time of day, right? But if you as a group are able to pool resources, it opens many doors. I'm just going to answer the question someone asked in the group, how do you evaluate startups? I think a lot has to be, the background of the person, the team, how big the market is, there are many ideas out there, a lot of people come up with ideas. You have to look at, their past record, your team's ability to execute, because a lot of it is the execution. Can these guys get the job done? Because it's not just talk, can people get the job done? Then you look at, this market is going to be a huge market. And that's how most VCs look at opportunities. It's like, if this guy is able to get a small percentage of this market, then it's going to be a sizable outcome for us. Because I'll start with in the VC industry. So I've seen a lot of friends, in particular diaspora, that go do one or two investments in Africa. They get burnt and they now have a bad experience, and they're like, no, never again. But I think that's the wrong approach. If you look at successful venture capital firms, they invest in like 20, 25 companies. So you have to have diverse. And of those 25, maybe 2 will make the fund, where you're making 10x, 100x your investment. So that's how you have to see it. So many of us, we don't have that kind of capital. So we can't diversify, and which is unfortunate. So you just make one bet, you have a poor outcome, and you quit the game. Then if you are an entrepreneur in a startup, maybe folks have that as a question. It's a long game. You have to stay the course. There are ups and downs. You just have to ride it. I found that most folks who are successful are patient. They wait it out. You can't be quick to be frustrated or quick to quit. That's just not how it works. It's a long game. You're talking, 8, 10 years of your life. If you look at most successful entrepreneurs, it took a long time. And there were many cases where it's not the original idea that was eventually successful. So you have to be aware of that. I hope that helps.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so, sorry.
It certainly did. So thanks for that. Thanks for that response again. Again, please, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question, or drop it in the chat section. I would just ask while we wait for anyone else to, to ask a question. Um, for someone that is, probably has like the entrepreneurial spirit, or has an idea of a business venture that they want to embark upon, I think that it would help if you can maybe just lay out a process of how one can go about that idea. I mean, some of us are just relocating to the US, and maybe we're not sure of how to register a company, how to pitch the idea. I mean, what platforms or processes exist that can help, like all the Y Combinator or something similar to that one can leverage upon to ultimately float their business plan or business venture. So if you don't mind, just kind of, if you can lay out a framework that someone could take on to establish a business venture.
So most VCs I've spoken with, and others in my field, so I'm speaking as an entrepreneur, I'm speaking as a VC, right? First thing is, most investors want to see working, right? They meet a lot of people who just toy with ideas and nothing comes of it, right? So it even means you buy a domain name, you come up with a mock-up of your idea. There has to be something tangible to show that this person has actually made some effort and gone beyond just dreaming in a beer parlor and thinking, oh, this might be a good idea, right? You don't know whether there's already 10 people doing this. You have not even gotten any kind of customer feedback, gotten any feedback from anywhere, had any trials. You've done nothing, right? So that's critical. That is truly critical. You have to have shown, gives people some idea that there's some credibility to this. No one wants to fund just ideas. No one just wants to fund ideas. I just lost my chain of thought for a second. But the point I just want to get across is, you have to have. Okay, I can remember quite a bit. No one wants to fund ideas. The other thing, advice I'll give. This might be a bit harsh, but I gave this advice for someone who was trying to actually even set up a fund. So this is even someone more sophisticated, right? And I said, look, if you can figure out, from Google search or calling a high-end lawyer who can help you set this up, this entry-level steps are a commodity. There's so much competition. If you can't figure out the basics, like, okay, where do I get a domain name? Or how do I access YC? People will chew you up alive, right? Because all this stuff is a 5-10 minute search on Google now, right? The big competitive advantage you have is truly your idea, not how do I go about, setting up an LLC, right? This is a 5-minute Google search, is what I'm trying to say. Because at that early stage, it's so competitive. So someone comes on Twitter, is asking, oh, how do I go about setting up my fund and all that? And I'm saying, you're not serious. There are probably over 1,000 funds in the US alone. You are still grappling with, how do I set up a fund? You haven't figured out how you're going to market this fund, how you're going to get people to actually give you money, how your strategy unique. So that's the level you have to be at. It's like gladiators at war. I mean, you're fighting to succeed. Like I said, 9 out of 10 startups fail if you're bootstrapped. 25% if you have VC funding, but you're not adding the percentage who actually get VC funding. So that's already another bar or filter. So it's not a casual game. It's 10 years of your life. So you can't be very lackadaisical about it. You can't be casual about it. So if you're not aggressive or vicious about the initial inquiries and searches, just go and find the most entry-level job you can get and don't worry about this entrepreneurship thing, because it's not an easy path. It's one of the most difficult things that you can do out there. Every day it's on your mind. Every day you're working on this thing. So I won't recommend it if you're not ready. For anyone who's not ready to do the research, to do the work, I just won't recommend it. It's not the easiest path. Back in the day when we were growing up, entrepreneurship wasn't so hot. Everyone thought it's like you're an entrepreneur because you're in between jobs. But it's actually the most difficult job out there. Really, yeah.
All right. No,
So,
no. Thanks for that. I mean, I think that you're spot on about the competition in that space. I mean, it's one thing to have an idea; it's another thing to follow through with the idea, come up with a plan, register the company and follow through. It's a cutthroat system out there. So everyone has to be on their A game when it comes to startups. And and I think we were just, for the benefit of those that were just looking at getting into that space. I think that was the drive behind that question. But for those that are already looking, that are already maybe in the early stage of their startups, looking at what processes or tools that are accessible, looking at how to raise angel investors, prepping up for Series A. What advice or what recommendations can you share with those in that kind of a space?
Yeah, great question. What I'll say is, be out there. Let people know what you're doing, right? There's no secrets in this business. It's all about execution. So if most of the money you will get will be from word of mouth. Most investors invest in people that are referred to them, people they know directly or indirectly, most, right? So someone has to be speaking about you somewhere, right? So one way of doing that is, develop mentors, but don't go around looking for mentors. Go around asking people questions. You have challenges in certain areas of your business. Ask questions. No one is looking, they will see, people want to help, but they want it to be targeted, directed, not just, people just looking for mentors. No, everyone's time is precious. But if you have a unique challenge in your business, look for people who have already done things in that space before. They'll be more than happy to answer your question. And that's how relationships are developed. Before you're even asking for money, they're offering. Like, oh, we like what you're doing. We think you have potential. We think you have a network. We have a network. We're going to introduce you to customers, suppliers, or investors. That's how it works out. Find people who are connected to the investors in that space or who invest in your country. Look for, friends on LinkedIn. Always have, value to add. Not just arbitrarily looking at. Just like, I have this challenge in my business, or who else can I talk to, about my business, or who is looking at this space, who might be thinking about investing in this space. This is where we like to go with the business and the market, things like that. But the key thing is, be selling every day, because that keeps the lights on. That keeps the light on. In as much as I have a fund, I also have an operating business that brings in cash every day. Maybe not as much as I like, but it allows you to survive. A lot of people have developed bad habits with, they see Silicon Valley, you raise money, and all you're doing is spending investor money. You have no customers, or you have no idea of how you're going to get customers. That was never the case in Africa. So you have to find a middle ground, find a way. If you're already in business, make sure that you're always selling. You have cash coming in every day, and the rest takes care of itself. Look at this guy Calendly. For a long time, he had no investors. That way he was able to keep a huge percentage of his business. His business is worth over $3 billion now. And I think he has about 50% of that business, or 40 or 50%, right? Earlier on, he complained about his struggle of finding investors, but now it apparently was a blessing in disguise. He made him more disciplined in how he approached the business, because he knew there was no sugar daddy waiting for him, with capital constantly to fund his runway. He had to pay his way, So maybe one more question. So
thanks, Abi. And we Abi went to. He didn't go to FMS, obviously. He went to another school, which we shall not mention, and he's actually at his own reunion. So I think we'll probably invite him back based on the interest and the feedback to have a proper session with us. But just to be respectful of his time, and the event is going to carry on. So I think the questions should keep coming. But we'll just take one more question if that's okay, and then we'll let him be on his way, and then we'll continue as a group.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, no,
you can mention that he went to Great Ife and leave it like that. So Great Ife.
Okay, so we had a few questions come through the chat section, and I think I'll just take one, or let me see if I can actually roll both questions into one. So the question is, the- you know, buying a business or investing in a startup or franchise. If you can share your thoughts on that, and then perhaps you could also just touch on some of the challenges that we have, like African companies, trying to set up here, like how do we go ahead with investment? Like investment, if investment is a good idea, just judging by some, okay, actually, if investing in an African company or maybe with African leadership in a company in North America, if that is one that you will encourage. So I think it's two questions, but if you don't mind, just kind of giving an overview on the choice of, buying in a business or a venture or investing in one. And then if one wants to invest, like, should we be looking out for taking out, companies with African leaders or African companies in this space?
Yeah, so great questions. So here's how I'll answer it. There are two different parts, right? You're saying, do you go acquire a business, or do you invest in startups with founders with African origin, right? So two different things, right? So the second one, investing in others, is more of hopefully passive income, where you're not too involved, unless you see it's an area where you can add some value. So if you're not too involved and it's passive, then you want to write smaller checks across many more companies. I'll recommend African origin founders because it's unique insights you have. You don't typically move in circles, unless maybe your classmates from school, of kids from here, native kids. You don't have access to those deals. They're not inviting you. So they'll first go to Silicon Valley to go raise money, or they'll raise from their country club or from their family and friends. A North American kid can easily get, $250,000 or $500,000 from family and friends before he's checking with his classmates. So you might not have access to those deals, but it might be easy for you to find, a hungry, hardworking diaspora founder who you have access to, and that you can actually invest a little. So your little can go very far. That's the benefit of investing in those kind of founders. You can invest 1,000, 5,000, and he's willing to take your check, and that 5,000, 10,000 can become times 5, times 10. Where else are you going to get that kind of return? We're coming from little. We can't take the example of we're trying to be Warren Buffett and we're getting small returns. These are managing billions. Okay, maybe Warren Buffett started with a lot more than a lot less than billions, but you get what my point. We need to take those bets that can have great outcomes. I'm not saying go put all your retirement money in those kind of bets, but if you're putting a small percentage of your disposable or your net worth in alternatives, which is startups, right? Or a fund, if you have access to a fund is actually the best way, because the fund is diversifying on your behalf. They're doing the active management on your behalf. The issue is many of us don't have access to those funds, because in many cases they want accredited investors. You have to have a certain net worth or a certain income. So unfortunately, many of us don't have access to this kind of deals, right? But hopefully, maybe if your group is able to pool resources, maybe those aggregated funds could apply in some cases. There's some funds, I think there's now some new, the Reg D, where they allow you to have more than, in the past it was like 100 accredited investors, but now they even allow you to have like, I think 35 unaccredited as part of your 100 count. So there have been some new laws that's increased the flexibility. So if you can take advantage of those laws, I would advise that. So try and find funds that you can invest in, maybe as a group or as individuals. That's often the best way. Then as an extreme, then you can do some direct investing in some startups. But many of us don't have that time to vet the deal, to do all the market research. it takes quite a bit of time and effort, right? So if you can do it through a fund, it's probably a less risky way to do it. And if you're going to do it direct, make sure you do many. So don't go and do just one or two and hope for the best. You probably need a breadth of investment options. Now, for the first question you asked, which is acquiring a business, again, like I said earlier on, it's probably the lowest risk way for us without much capital to come into this country and gain some wealth. Just like how you get leverage the mortgage on a house, right? But with, I think the SBA, okay, I mean, you have to have personal guarantees involved. You're able to use leverage to acquire a much larger business than what your network is. But of course, recognize that your personal wealth is at risk because I think it comes in personal guarantees. In some cases, I think some investors have mitigated by getting the owners to offer seller financing to reduce some of the SBA guarantees they have to give. So maybe a seller note. So there's some tricks to the model. So if that interests you, you can do some research as to how do you mitigate the risk and how do you use less money to acquire a bigger business. But I think that is most practicable and most achievable way for many of us to get on that wealth track in North America. Go acquire an existing low-risk business. It might not be a sexy business. In fact, in most cases, they're not sexy, but they're lower risk. But if you don't have the time and you're in a great career, you don't want to go roll up your sleeves and go buy a landscaping company, for example, then you can invest in other entrepreneurs who can do all the running around for you, or you can invest in a fund. So I'll leave it at that, and I hope this was helpful.
Yeah, no. So Abi, thank you again. This has been very helpful, and would like to leave open the option of inviting you back, and I know you can't say this, so maybe I'll be mindful of how I say it. But I think in terms of funds and having access to some of these investment vehicles, I know Abi is doing some amazing and incredibly creative things, the sort of things we should be thinking about. And again, it's tough to openly talk about all of them on forums like this because, I mean, there are rules against soliciting. But I think to folk who, to the extent there's any interest, will be more than happy to make those connections. But thanks again for your time. Thanks for taking time out of your reunion to kind of educate us and spend time with us. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to having you back. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bim. I'll always love to be here to help in any way I can. And definitely look forward to any connections for the fund and other things we're doing. Thanks, guys. And enjoy your session.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I mean, we can keep the questions coming. I'll be happy to, I mean, if there's any follow-up or, I mean, if folk that want to connect directly with Abi, I'd be happy to share the details. But to the extent there, I'm not a subject matter expert on all the topics he spoke about, but I think I can speak to some of these things. So to the extent there are any questions, I know there was a question around franchising versus buying a business, which I think it touched on, but not in detail. I think there are pros and cons to both. And again, I don't want to be presumptuous, but also not patronizing. Hopefully everyone understands what he meant by leverage in terms of buying a business. That's basically just borrowing. It's like getting a mortgage, right? And again, if you with leverage, you can buy a bigger business than you could otherwise afford with just your cash flow. I think the difference with franchising versus your own business, it depends on what you're looking for. There are no guarantees. I think a franchise, typically you would have a bigger brand. I mean, you have a lot of fixed costs, right? You have to pay someone. If you buy a Subway or McDonald's franchise, you have to pay them a fee, right? So, but then you get the benefit of being under a big umbrella, right? Versus you can buy a widget company that nobody knows about. So again, it just depends on what you're looking for. I think the second piece that's also very important is going this path, what the personal goals are. I mean, some people want to buy this and this is they're thinking of this passively, right? In that case, obviously, something like a franchise makes more sense because it's easy. You already have all the infrastructure. You probably don't need to be as involved, right? Versus if you're kind of buying bolts and nuts where you probably have to be more involved because there is no infrastructure. So yeah, you're trading up some of the upside for existing infrastructure and a brand. So again, it boils down to what your personal criteria. What your personal criteria and what you're looking to achieve. So I don't know if that helps answer the question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Oga Bim, I have a follow-up question. My question is for those that are that currently have jobs and are looking to float a business idea, like maybe they you've given it some thought, you have a business plan, and you're looking to venture into this. I mean, obviously there's always the risk-averse approach of maintaining your job and trying to still float that idea. What would you say is typical for the amount of time and the amount of hours that one can commit to a startup, and if it's visible for one to still maintain a job and try to embark upon that journey?
No, it's a great question. I think it often boils down to two things, in my opinion. And again, this is just my opinion. I think it boils down to how much flexibility you have and what your goals are, right? I'm from a school of thought that I believe, look, if you're going to do something and do it properly, that side gig has to be your main gig, right? It's hard to do. I don't know anyone who's, and then the third piece is scale, right? Are you looking for something that just passively, you want some side income to top up your regular income? But I don't know anyone who's built $1 billion or even $1 million business on the side. It's bloody hard to do, right? Sorry, excuse my language, right? It's really hard to do, right? So the amount of time you devote depends on, one, your flexibility. Because again, I mean, if you don't have the flexibility and you've got to pay the bills, no savings, then it's a lot harder, right? Because you have to focus on, you can't let go of your 9 to 5, right? The more savings you have, and it's interesting that we've listened to so many of these talks. Abi mentioned it. I remember Oga Kalu mentioned it in one of his talks. It starts with savings and having flexibility, right? Building some cushion, right? That gives you the flexibility. So I would always say the first step in entrepreneurship is to have cushion. And that cushion comes from some savings. Outside of Daddy has a trust fund, which is a completely different kettle of fish where you can take risks, then it boils down to just having savings, building some savings. The second part is then as you build those savings, then how committed are you to the idea, right? How committed are you to the idea? Is this something that, look, I'm going to bet it all, I'm going to give up my job, I know the risks, right? And in spite of the risk, I believe enough in it, right? And what you often find, and again, I don't mean this as a slight, what you often find is a lot of people like the idea, but want to straddle, right? And it's really, really hard to straddle. Again, I don't know anybody who's straddled and built anything of scale, of real scale, right? Right. So, but that determination has to come from the individual, right? It's easier to look at a calendar and say, wow, his company is worth $3 billion, right? But he bet everything, right? In 2014, he was in Ukraine when the Crimea War started, and his family thought it was crazy. It maxed out every credit card, but that was his conviction, right? And he had that conviction that, look, this is it, right? There's no plan B. But sometimes when you're in that position, it also creates a determination that that, look, there's no fallback, right? I haven't got a 9 to 5, right? So that I'm all in, right? So again, I don't want to give advice, but I think, again, it boils down to how much flexibility you have and then just your personal goals, right? Do you believe this? Do you believe enough in it? Are you committed enough to it? And that's not always easy. And that doesn't mean it's easy. I mean, again, everyone likes a success story, right? But being committed is that you believe in it regardless of any guarantees of the outcome, right? So in a sense, it's almost like a leap of faith, right? So that's my view, that you've got to just make sure you know your facts, you know how much flexibility you have, right? That you can sustain what you can sustain, how many blows you can kind of withstand, and then how strong your conviction is on what you're trying to do. And just one more thing. The interesting thing is that conviction actually comes across as well when you're doing things like fundraising, right? Because people see it, right? When you're talking to an investor, you can tell who is all in, right? Versus who is straddling and trying to like, okay, it's an option. People don't want you to take options with their money, right? They want to know that, okay, the person I'm investing in, this is it, right? They're all in this, they're waking up, they're sleeping, they're all about generating returns and I mean creating value for me as an investor. So sorry, I don't know if that answers your question, Aya.
It does. It does. Thank you, sir. I think I'll ask for if there are any other questions from the folks on the call.
I have a question. President Beam, that coded last message you were saying when Abby was on the line, where you were saying something creative, but you're not allowed to talk, but then you can't. When are you going to tell us what exactly is the meaning of what you just said?
No, so basically he has a fund. He has a couple of funds. He has a frontier markets fund. He has a real estate fund, and he has a hedge fund, right? And there are various minimal levels of commitment to invest. But I mean, I think there are opportunities people should look at, because again, not everyone's going to start a VC or start a private equity, and most of the big funds don't have. It's just tough to get access. I mean, and again, I don't mean this, right? I mean, you have funds that the minimum investment commitment is $1 million, right? Not many people have $1 million like lying around, right? So he's found ways to do these things on a smaller scale. Again, there are still minimums, but if you're interested in looking at investing in, I mean, whether it's a private equity fund, a hedge fund, a real estate fund, I think he's doing some things interesting that are worth looking into. The reason I was coy about it, again, I mean, he's on the call, and there are rules, very strict rules around soliciting, right? I mean, especially if, I mean, investors are not accredited. So you have to be careful. I think I have more flexibility, frankly, in saying some of these things than he does. But these are things that are open, and I'm happy to share details offline if people reach out. It's not a secret, or one of the reasons we're trying to give exposure with people like him is to give people access. So if there's interest, please reach out. Happy to make the connection.
Then the other question I actually had, and I joined the call late because I was actually just getting back to El Paso. So I don't know if he talked about it or if somebody asked it already, so forgive me if that's been done. But I did hear the talk about funds, raising funds as a group. So the key thing, and I've always thought of that, but then the key thing, not for me to raise, but that, we set up something like that. But the key thing is, how do people get in and how do people get out? Is there some structure somewhere? Is it called something that one can study so that one can understand how those small funds form basically and run?
No, again, great question, right? Because I mean, I think there are two extremes, and I'm going to use two extreme examples. One extreme is not structured, right? A group of people just get together and say, okay, look, we're going to put in, I don't know, 1,000 each every month, right? And that 1,000 we're going to invest it jointly, right? And the benefit is we pool capital, so we have access to things that we won't individually otherwise have access to, right? It's quick, it's easy to do. The flip side to that is because of the lack of structure, you often leave room for who's going to make decisions on what you're investing in. Who's going to make decisions when someone is coming in, someone is going out, right? there are lots of things, and it's not to overthink it. There are lots of things that become, I mean, the benefit you get from that is the flexibility and speed that you can do things quickly. But the flip side is you haven't thought of a lot of possibilities or eventualities, right? And the eventualities could be if the thing blows and become $1 billion, what happens? Or if it becomes zero, what happens, right? Both things carry kind of risk. The other perspective, right, which is the end of the spectrum, I would typically lean towards is something that's more structured. But where it's more structured, you need an administrator. You need someone to run the fund, right? You need things set in stone. These are the conditions you're pulling in. You can't put in money and now tomorrow say, I'm not doing it again, give me my money, right? There's strict rules around when you put in, when you withdraw, managing the fund. And these things aren't easy, right? So that's what makes it sometimes hard. And again, look, these are extremes. There's some middle ground between both ends, right? But the having structure makes it harder because somebody has to do all that structure admin work. And it's a lot of work, right? There's a reason why if you have, most private equity and venture funds, they have what you call 2 and 20, which basically means as a fund, if I don't know, BlackRock raises $1 billion or if they raise $100 million, they will take a 2% management fee every year. So out of that 100 million, every year, they'll take 2 million, right? Just for the admin stuff, pay lawyer, pay accountant, keep records, all that, right? And pay salaries. And then they take 20% of the profit, right? So there's a reason that model exists. I think what we've got to find creatively is a way to bridge the two extremes, right? And the biggest difficulty is always finding people to step up and say, okay, I'm going to be the fund administrator. And oh, by the way, I'm going to do all this work and it's going to be for free and right. So that's always hard to do. My sense would probably be I think a starting point could be to pull capital to invest in vehicles where individually, no individual meets a minimum threshold, but that vehicle would already have a structure. They will already have rules, right? So again, if you say, okay, let's say you have a vehicle that requires $100,000 for minimum investor, you can say, okay, ExJAM, we're going to invest in this. Anybody who wants to come in, right? But the rules of when you get your money back, what is being invested in is not determined by any individual. That fund already sets the structure. And if that 100,000 becomes $1 million, they basically pay out at the end and they distribute. In the meantime, nobody's calling Ogake, say, Ogake, see, this month is tough. Oh, I beg, that's 5K I gave you. I need 3K out of it now. I don't want to hear any, because you've all put it in. So I think for me, that's the best starting point to pull capital to invest in a vehicle. So that vehicle has a structure, but then the flexibility of, okay, everyone's pulling capital and you don't need much structure to do that, right? If it's 100K and someone puts in 7K, they own 7%. So whatever is distributed, they will take 7% of it. It's very simple, right? So I think that probably is a more pragmatic starting point than starting a fund from scratch, in my opinion.
So, President Beam, if we don't get this guy back, I'm sure you can also do justice to this topic when we have a larger forum. You also seem to have experience in this field, and it's all about seeking opinions and then weighing them against our own abilities. But knowledge is key. Information is very, very vital.
No worry. We're happy to help, but we'll get him back. He's Ogake's home, but this is what Ogake is doing for him and you know, like in FMS, when you say he knows Ogake from home, he knows Ogake from home. So Ogake can help drag him back too.
Bros, I didn't just want to jump into your meeting and start saying how far. I don't know where Una start. So I also have the line of discipline.
Yeah, no, but I'm happy to help and happy to further these discussions. I mean, and hopefully, like I said, this is a pre-reunion event. So hopefully this is just the beginning, and hopefully we'll be having more of these conversations formally and informally next week in Toronto. And for those who don't make it, I'm sure, who are not able to make it, I'm sure we'll find a way to kind of cascade the information so it's not just limited to the people that are there.
President Lim, I have one thing I want to add. Oh, sorry, I think somebody wanted to say something.
Go ahead, Ogake. Go ahead after you, sir.
All right. So I wanted to say that, you see, when I asked you that question about putting together a fund, right? And you said, well, it can be too structured. And you said it can be too unstructured, somewhere in the middle. And you actually started to highlight the things that should be in place, you know, those, you see, that's the thing. I think you've taken your knowledge of this area for granted, because those items 1, 2, 3, 4 at least have to be in place is not knowledge that, well, most people know. So here's a suggestion of an action item. I know you are very busy, but that is the missing, in my opinion, that is the missing part of us. For a long time, this dream of, hey, let's even try this fund. We've been talking about this thing, I don't know, since Yahoo groups, right? That we should have a fund that we can use to take risk. And this is what we're talking about. So that knowledge is what seems to have been missing within the body. Now, the action item basically is that just the way cryptocurrency was created, where somebody basically wrote the whole structure and released it on the internet that this is what it will look like. And experts read it and felt, oh my goodness, this is airtight. And they started to actually put value to it. I want to suggest that you do something similar that, you know, an organization like ours, and maybe in future, other organizations can say, this is the blueprint for doing cooperative, in quotes.
No, absolutely. And I apologize. I probably have to jump off in a couple of minutes here. I just get back home from very, very, very long waka. No, I think absolutely. I think, I mean, on a personal, from a personal perspective, I think the challenge for me is bandwidth at the moment. But I'll also put it out there to say some of our young folk who are looking at, I mean, this is an interesting thesis, right? These are things that we can, I mean, have other people, I mean, have. But I think the reason I suggested that. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go on.
Yeah, hello? Yeah, I think one of the reasons I suggested is my advice would always be starting from somewhere. And that starting from somewhere really means something very simple, right? Because the difficulty with structure is it takes time. And time means things will drag on. But first step, there's going to be a fund. The goal is to raise, I mean, I don't know, 50,000, 100,000. And this fund would be invested in other funds, right? That way, nobody's doing wild admin. And it's simple to use 100%. I mean, I would actually tell a story. right? And having one person, and we all have our day jobs, it just makes it really difficult. So I think that pragmatic way of like, okay, look, pool capital, the capital is going to invest in other funds, right? And everybody's going to have their share of it. And it's simple. You own 10%, 15, 5, 3%. It's just very simple, right? So I think that is something that's practical. That's something that's achievable. That's something that could be done relatively quickly. So we'll look forward to hopefully, I won't say kickstarting, maybe furthering some of those conversations during the reunion. And yeah, we'll try and make them actionable.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure some of us have to drop off to catch up with other things. Well, thanks for all the information.
Thank you, Gabby. Any other questions, comments?
Who is on this call that is not coming for reunion?
So thanks again, everyone. Sorry, I have to jump off, but look forward to seeing everyone in Canada next week, and have a great weekend. But thanks thanks everybody for participating. Yeah, this is, definitely been very informative.
Thank you, Gabin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So now I will go collect money from Oga Chris to do investments. I like this session, man. I like this session.
If you get any 1 million, what you know they use?
I won't go collect that.
Okay, you say 1 million, but he didn't specify if it's the Barbie dollar or if it's.
I want to go Oga Chris.
Sorry, let me be clear. Okay, any
amount where you call.
Any spare $1 million dollars.
No problem. Me self they go Oga Chris because he get all the denominations. So anyone will want once now 1 million. You know they do less than 1 million. So any denomination will want to go meet Oga Chris will give us. So in a dollar you talk.
No, Friday we have to come my own.
Hello.
You go ahead first.
My own shop banker now.
ExJAM.
Sir?
Sorry, what did you say?
Huh?
What did you say? I just heard I heard my name.
No, they asked me who be venture capital here. I say now you. So we go come borrow money from you to go give him. We go give the other guy.
I get monopoly, even duopoly stuff. I get Toys and Us. Toys and Us, I get all the money.
Once that you give us, you go work.
No problem now.
Once that you give us,
I won't direct you on where to take you to.
We do well.
Yeah, I actually thought this was a very nice section.